I was watching this yesterday and it just popped up out the blue on YouTube. So I'm about to play it. I'm about to play it. I can't play all of it. It's a 20 something, 26, 27 minute video.
One of the greatest unsolved mysteries of all time. Where is the wreckage of Amelia Earhart's plane?
Amelia Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, vanish in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Speculation swirls that there's more to the story.
How does a celebrated pilot just disappear? And there's no evidence of her plane.
She was still alive when they stopped looking. For 3 days after Amelia Earhart vanished, radio operators heard her voice, crying, begging, saying the water was rising and she needed to get out. The US Navy ignored every single transmission. They were searching 350 miles in the wrong direction. And by the time anyone figured out where she actually was, giant crabs had already started eating her body. This isn't speculation. This is what the evidence now shows. And the reason this mystery stayed buried for 87 years. Someone made sure it did. Said they were running north and south. Her voice was described as sounding like she was about to burst into tears or scream, and then silence. The most famous female pilot in history had vanished. But here's what nobody talks about. What if she didn't crash immediately? What if she survived? Because for the next several days, radio operators around the world picked up signals that sounded exactly like Amelia Earhart. The US Navy launched the largest search and rescue operation in American history up to that point. Over 250,000 square miles of ocean was scoured by ships and aircraft. Battleships, destroyers, and an aircraft carrier all joined the hunt. Planes flew grid patterns for hours at a time, scanning the endless blue for any sign of wreckage or survivors. The operation cost nearly $4 million, which would be almost $100 million today. The world held its breath. Newspapers ran daily updates. Millions of people who had never met Amelia Earhart prayed for her safe return. But here's the problem. They were looking in the wrong place. The Itasca searched northwest of Howland Island, but Amelia's final transmission mentioned the 157-337 line. That's a navigation coordinate that runs northwest to southeast. If she was flying along that line, looking for the island, she could have been either northwest or southeast of Howland. But the Navy focused almost entirely on the northwest.
Mm.
Why? Because that's where the official flight plan suggested she should be. But what if she drifted? What if the headwinds had pushed her further than expected? What if she'd already passed Howland Island without seeing it? Here's the thing. A researcher named Liz Smith later calculated that if Amelia and Fred forgot to adjust for crossing the international date line, their navigation would have been off by roughly 60 miles. 60 miles in the middle of the Pacific Ocean is the difference between rescue and oblivion. And that 60-mile error would have put them southeast of Howland, not northwest. The Navy was searching in exactly the wrong direction. And here's what really makes this disturbing. For days after Amelia's disappearance, radio operators across the world reported picking up distress signals. The signals matched her voice. They matched her frequency. They came in patterns that suggested someone was deliberately trying to send messages. One of the most compelling reports came from a teenager in Florida named Betty Klenk. Using her family's shortwave radio, Betty claimed she heard a woman's voice saying she was Amelia Earhart and needed help. Betty listened for 3 hours,
Mm.
frantically scribbling notes in a notebook. She heard the woman arguing with a disoriented man. She heard someone say that water was knee-deep and they needed to get out. Her father reported the information to the Coast Guard. They dismissed it as a hoax. But Betty's notes were incredibly specific. She documented times, phrases, and emotional states that would be nearly impossible to fabricate. and her descriptions matched what you'd expect from someone stranded on a beach as tides came in and out. The timing of the signals even aligned with low tide on islands in the area where Amelia might have landed. The Coast Guard received dozens of similar reports from around the world. All were dismissed as ghost signals or attention seekers. But what if they weren't? What if Amelia Earhart survived the crash and spent days trying to call for help while the entire US Navy searched in the wrong direction? Because 3 years later, a British officer found something on a remote island that should have solved this mystery forever. In 1940, a British colonial officer named Gerald Gallagher was
That
exploring
damn Gerald.
Nicomaroro, a remote coral atoll about 350 miles southeast of Howland Island. And he found something strange: human bones scattered beneath a tree, a sextant box, a woman's shoe, and an empty jar of anti-freckle cream, the same brand Amelia Earhart was known to use. The atoll sat directly along the 157-337 line that Amelia mentioned in her final transmission. If she'd been flying southeast instead of northwest, this is exactly where she might have crash landed. Gallagher sent the bones to Fiji for analysis. A physician named Dr. Hoodless examined them and concluded they belonged to a short, stocky European man. And then he threw them away. No DNA testing, no second opinion, no preservation for future analysis. The bones were simply discarded. For decades, that seemed like the end of the story. But in the 1980s, researchers began re-examining Hoodless's original measurements using modern forensic databases. And they discovered something shocking. The bones could have belonged to a woman between 5 feet 7 inches and 5 feet 8 inches tall, exactly Amelia Earhart's height. Hoodless had simply gotten it wrong, and by throwing away the evidence, he guaranteed the mystery could never be definitively solved. But the circumstantial evidence kept piling up. Researchers found remnants of cooking fires, fish bones, and makeshift tools on Nicomaroro, signs that someone had survived there for an extended period. They found fragments of a mirror that appeared to be deliberately positioned to reflect sunlight, a signal to passing aircraft.
That girl was
They
smart.
found a piece of aluminum that matched the specifications of Amelia's Lockheed Electra. And they found something that explains why no bodies were ever recovered: coconut crabs. These massive creatures can grow up to 3 feet long. Their claws are powerful enough to crack open coconuts, and they're known to drag carcasses into burrows and consume them entirely, scattering bones across vast areas. If Amelia survived the crash but eventually died on that island, the coconut crabs would have disposed of her remains within weeks. But here's the detail that haunts researchers to this day. Navy planes flew directly over Nicomaroro on July 9th, 1937, just 1 week after Amelia's disappearance. They were searching for survivors, and they saw nothing. Either Amelia wasn't there yet, or she was too weak to signal, or she was already dead. We'll never know for certain, but the evidence suggests that while the US Navy was searching in the wrong direction, Amelia Earhart may have been alive on that island, desperately waiting for rescue that never came. And some researchers believe that wasn't an accident. Here's where the story takes its darkest turn. Some historians believe Amelia Earhart wasn't just a civilian pilot attempting a record-breaking flight. They believe she was on an unofficial reconnaissance mission for the US government. The theory goes like this. In 1937, tensions with Japan were escalating in the Pacific. The Japanese military controlled several island chains that would become strategic targets in World War II.